ultimate fishing authority in the Northeast, the Fisherman magazine.
No guessing, just catching. New Explore Series fish finders keep you locked on fish with unbeatable clarity, best-in-class imaging options, and a stunning ultra-bright HD screen. There's more to explore, only with Humminbird.
I'm Jim Hutchinson with a New Jersey, Delaware Bay video fishing forecast for this week, Thursday, April 17th, 2025. The 17th of April, and just 17 days left until the summer flounder kickoff here in New Jersey. Fluke, if that's what you will. 17 days. Sorry, is the Carmichael jersey too soon for some of you? Yeah, we're only 7 days, 1 week away from the NFL draft, so I thought that was appropriate as well. Harold Carmichael actually went in the 7th round, 1971. So you can think about that with your favorite team wherever they're drafting this week. But it's not football season, it's fishing season. And this week we're gonna go to the photos for our weekly fishing forecast because I've been getting a bunch of them, which means that fishermen readers and viewers of this weekly video are catching fish. Striped bass leads the way this time of year, always does. And they're getting bigger and they're spreading out farther and farther throughout the New Jersey, Delaware Bay region. The catch and release action continues along the Delaware River stretches. A lot of rain in the past week, of course, but Boopy Norman checked in with me. I believe it's the first time that he did this season. Let me know that he and his son got out in balmier conditions sometime in between the raindrops, in the midst of all that nastiness, had fish on the Delaware up to 40 inches. Another message I got this week was from another Delaware River Sharpie, Mandel Mobley. He told me Tuesday, quote, "I'll have a lot of new footage for you in the next 2 weeks. I'm definitely going to have a few 50-pounders for you to show full video within the next 2 weeks." So that says to me, with that confidence, that the rest of April should only continue to improve on the striped bass front in the Delaware, along the coast, and up into the Raritan as well. So let's go north. As you would expect, the jumbo striper run should be in full swing on the Raritan Bay, and we're starting to get better and better reports from certain pockets and areas. Guys from shore are fishing the bloodworms, but they're also throwing plugs at this point as well. I'm not going to give you the specific locations, but the fishing on the Raritan Bay has improved. In fact, it must have improved because Tie Man's Chuck Manny is back from his snowbird status in South Carolina and out and about in search of fish. Chris Pereira let me know of some nice action that they found. Chuck on the Tie Man, out back, stripers in the 20-pound range. I'm not sure when Chuck is going to push out front in front of Sandy Hook, but if you see Chuck's boat out there in the next couple of weeks, you can assume that more of those ocean run stripers, perhaps some of the early spawning arrivals from the Chesapeake or the Delaware, are getting there. But I believe we're still in the midst of the actual striped bass spawn along the striper coast. By the way, Cesar Carranza was on that trip with Chuck as well, the maker of C80 plugs. He had this post on TikTok that I lifted this week, a nighttime striper with a broom tail, a broom of a tail there. He caught it during a recent night session while throwing a 38 werewolf, creeping while we're sleeping. Caesar let me know that he's working on that prototype plug, that werewolf style. Of course, it is a great time to get out there and test some of those newer offerings, whether you're a plug builder or you picked up a few newbies over the season. In fact, I've got a batch of newbies from Missouri. I can't tell you what they're for just yet, and I can't tell you what I have, but I'm looking forward to trying those. Of course, some of the reports that we're getting already, the contemporary classics are working, that Bone SP Minnow. I got this email from Jeffrey Durand, another nighttime fish from Raritan Bay last week, for Dominic Chiarello, aka Captain Dom on YouTube. He caught that on the last of the outgoing tide somewhere on the Raritan Bay. Again, that was on a Bone SP Minnow, and I heard it was the sinking minnow. Now, along those front side beaches, it's still slow, with ocean water temperatures still a little bit on the cool side, but hopefully things will start to heat up this week, certainly as the week progresses. Not sure how many ocean run fish are in the mix right now, but out back, and in fact, I don't know how many of these ocean run fish are the ones that you'll find out back, but Barnegat Bay anglers are seeing some improved action of late, and you don't have to keep valuable rack time exposed for doing it. You don't have to be sleeping all night. James Kearney said he caught 5 bass on bloodworms in the Toms River, daytime hours. On Tuesday, George Glantz caught this big striper on the Toms River. Manu Butera said, quote, action is starting to pick up with this class of striper. So some of those bigger striped bass are on the prowl, and we're looking for some of those silvery stripers in the back of your fishing graveling point or somewhere along the Egg Harbor River. You'll notice those ocean run fish because they've got a more silver color, and you'll find some of those sea lice on there too. Now, I did my first shakedown cruise of the year on my little center console, hit the sod banks in the upper Barnegat Bay with soft plastics, even tried a couple of poppers around the sedges. That was on Monday, had no luck. But water temperatures to start the week, just as the tide was coming in on the upper stretches of Barnegat Bay, I had 51 degrees. So I think a lot of that sod bank plugging from Barnegat Bay down into Cape May should be quickly improving in the days ahead. In fact, I grabbed this 10-day forecast from my phone app on Wednesday afternoon during those windy conditions that we had, another day of wind. But looking ahead towards a high of 77 degrees in Brick Township along the Jersey Shore on Saturday, upper 60s come Sunday, Easter Sunday. Hopefully that's a nice little trigger event for us, those warming conditions, triggering more of that bite. Now, in the Great Bay Area, which I mentioned before, it's been the black drum action from the sod banks that continually impresses for a lot of folks who are now soaking clams along those sedges. Qua Win had a couple of the boomers last week while fishing with his buddy Johnny using clams. I'd love to tell you where exactly this was, but I'd be burning my own spot. Suffice to say, I'm guessing the drum are spread out now in Great Bay, Absecon Bay, Little Bay, probably throughout Little Egg Harbor Bay as well, feeding near clam or oyster beds, if you can find those, if you know where they are. Perhaps even up along some of the feeder creeks where they tend to dump some of those smaller crabs and mollusks and different organisms on the outgoing tide. And a lot of times that's where those little table-sized black drum will get up there and feed on whatever tumbles out the creek. Now that's black drum, but I would remind you that blackfish, aka tog, you only have until the end of April to take advantage of that spring fishery. It's a very tight window during this April spawning season for blackfish, but you have another 2 weeks to book your charter, jump on a headboat perhaps, or apparently from word that we're getting from Noel at One Stop Bait and Tackle in Atlantic City, you can follow Valentino's lead here and just hit the AC jetty system. We are getting some reports of tog on a lot of the jetties, inlet jetties. If you have a groin jetty along the coast somewhere, they don't exist very often anymore, or some of that bridge structure, especially closer to the inlet. So you only have a couple of weeks to take advantage of it. You got that 4-fish bag limit, so get out there and give it a shot. By the way, Matt Sorrentino from NJ Fishing Club, he only has a spot or two open for his 5th annual high hook Blackfish Super Pool aboard the Mary M out of Barnegat Light. That's coming up on April 26th. If you want to jump in on that, you should log in this week to njfishingclub.com. Now, if you're looking for some blackfish tips, this Sunday, Jenny's Open Boat Premier Exclusive will showcase a blackfish seminar she just wrapped up with our friends over at the Village Harbor Fishing Club. Her seminar sheds a little bit of light on the basics, jigs, rigs, baits, braid, leader, rod and reel combos that Jenny likes to use for blackfish. It's a long one, so instead, Jenny's here this week for Open Boat to give you a little premiere of what you're going to see in the premiere on Sunday.
Hey guys, this week's Open Boat is going to air separately on Sunday because it is a longer one. It's a blackfish seminar I did with the Village Harbor Fishing Club. It was supposed to be a whole stretch of open boats on blackfishing, but my trip got canceled, so we're gonna have to postpone the Let's Go Blackfishing video, the blackfishing recipe video till the winter season, but it's fine. We have fluking coming up, and stay tuned because we are gonna do, similar to our Surfcasters Challenge, we are gonna do a fluking one. And there is another challenge coming up on next week's Open Boat, so I'll catch you guys there.
For more than 20 years, anglers everywhere have come to know one thing, that nothing says no to fish bites.
hog, black drum, striped bass. Those are the best reports from the local salt I can provide you at this point. But I do expect to hear from a few weakfish sharpies as those early tide runners start to appear. The Jetty Rocks in Cape May County, for example. That's where we usually get some of the very first rumblings of weakfish, typically on pink zooms, maybe some of those smaller Rapala X-Raps. A lot of that is a night fishery. Those tide runners start coming in behind LBI, behind Absecon, Little Egg Harbor, around the 9th Street Causeway Bridge, Tip. Not a lot of people are targeting those weakfish, and usually when I mention the Sharpies, they're the ones that have the tightest lip. But the full moon this past weekend should kick off a few of those fish, kick them in the tails perhaps, to maybe make the run into the estuaries. We got 2 more weeks until the new moon. That's another lunar event that really moves water around in greater force, and hopefully that pushes more of our spring migration into gear, get some of those fish moving into the back bays and salty rivers. I often think of weakfish as our saltwater trout, but it's actually part of the drum family that also includes black drum, of course, and croaker. But this is the time of year when the big spawning tide runners move into the back bays. Think early stages of April, but into May and the first part of June. Those big fish move in here to spawn, very much like we see on the Delaware River and the Hudson Raritan Complex with striped bass. And it's also, I would remind you, the reason we see those black drum, those big boomers, especially down in the Delaware Bay. That kicks off that spawning event. That's why we see those big boomers in the Delaware Bay. I did talk to Qua by text about that drum he caught in Great Bay. He said the last couple of days it kind of turned off. You wonder if it turned off right after the moon. Are those fish in the spawning stages? I'm not exactly sure, but those fish are around. And again, I'm looking forward to hearing some of the first reports of tide runner weakfish, which should happen any day now. Bluefish as well. I would mark that new moon in 2 weeks, the end of April, as the time perhaps when we see our first run of bluefish, of those racers coming in some of the inlets. It's typically on a lunar phase in April or early May. So right around that time where the back bays should start getting some of those bluefish reports. And again, I mentioned the 51-degree water temperatures that I registered on Monday. We look ahead towards this warmer weather weekend. Hopefully, water temperatures will go up a couple of ticks and we'll start seeing more movement. The true trout of New Jersey, of course, the brookies, the browns, and of course, rainbow trout from a prolific stocking effort by the New Jersey Division of Fish and Wildlife that's been going on all spring. Now, if you're a paid subscriber, you saw this week's digital weekly edition. That's Doug Apsley on the cover with his winning trout, 7¼ pounds, on opening day, Shark River Surf Anglers and their event at Spring Lake. That is one impressive trout. We have some more photos. I took a bunch of photos of that day, the opening day trout season. So if your child or you as a child were out there catching trout in Spring Lake on the opening day, go to thefisherman.com, look up this week's edition because I do have a few photo spotlights from that day. We also have Scott Newhall with his trout feature on Fishing Around the Fall Trees, Backwater Stripers by Jeff Sullivan, Spring Tog by Matt Broderick, along with our latest fishing reports from throughout the region, New Jersey into Delaware. Freshwater editor J.B. Casper, he had a lot to say in this week's Freshwater report from the first week of trout fishing in our little corner of America. But I also got a couple of emails from folks who've been out and about enjoying this trout season so far in 2025. BJ Nemeth emailed me this. He had a productive opening day on a good-sized trout. Also heard from the Anglers Anonymous podcast, folks, this week. Your anonymity dies now. Dave Gansey and his son Sal had an amazing opener on stocked trout in Millville. Yes, indeed, South Jersey. We have a pretty good stocking program. I always used to think years ago that all the trout stocked were up in Northwest Jersey in trout country, but that's not the case. The division is out there putting trout in all types of bodies of water. Millville, Pahatcong Lake, so many areas, and so many of them end up being put and take because they're a little bit more tannic. They don't support some of those bigger fish summer long. You've got the ospreys and cormorants making a mess of it too. So get your freshwater license, get your stamp, enjoy that fishery before you get all wrapped up in summer flounder and offshore tuna. Big Shad Tournament on the Delaware is set to kick off next week. It's a big money event, believe it or not, thousands of dollars in prizes. They usually have a Yamaha jet boat to give away. I wrote it up for this week's digital edition at thefisherman.com. You'll find that over there when you're rooting around. And again, as a subscriber, a paid subscriber, you get digital access to everything, the entire fisherman.com website. If you're not a paid subscriber, that's when you see that window shut. It says you have reached your limit for the month. So get in on that, $31.95, become a Fisherman subscriber and get access to all the news and information at thefisherman.com. For more on that shad tournament that's coming up on the Delaware, let's check in with our weekly report from George Schauer, our Pocono Outdoors guy.
Well, hey, thanks, Jim. It looks like things are finally starting to improve here out in the Poconos. You know, we had a pretty tumultuous week. I actually had some snow here in my backyard, about 3 inches, if you can believe it or not. I guess good news is it's gone by noon, so we have to play around with that too much. Certainly didn't have to hit the buggy to plow the snow. Anyway, a couple guys are out catching some fish. Certainly the cold weather, the trout guys are absolutely loving this. Chris Hutchinson checked in. He was down in Chester County getting a couple of really nice trout himself. Always a good time, even especially down a bit south when weather gets cool like this. Let's see, Chris Johnson checked in. He and his boys were out doing a little trout stream fishing. Boys absolutely loved it, he said. They were out having a great time. Got a couple little ones for themselves. Chris actually got himself a nice tiger trout, something you don't see every day. Not that uncommon though, but they're a great catch when you do get them. Great work, Chris. Steve Kolnick and Noel were out on the Lehigh River drift fishing. Did a little trout fishing there as well. Got into some nice brown trout. Hopefully the smallmouth bite will kick in on Lehigh not too soon, and we can get some nice trout and smallmouth for some time on the river. Now switching over to bass, a lot of guys are out there bass hunting before the spawn. We're starting to see the bass move up in that shallow water chasing bait. Nick Canestra, well, he checked in from the lower Susquehanna region down there bass fishing in some of the lakes there. Got himself a really nice chunky bass there. Certainly one getting ready for the spawn coming up. Also, Tom Gilmore, well, he was out in a local area up by my way, out in his kayak right after that snowstorm the past weekend. So he was still producing some nice bass and even a pickerel for his time on the water. Great work there, Tom. Now, guys, the shad and the striper are still dominant on the river, making waves there. The shad are hit and miss right now. It seemed to back off a little bit with that cold front that pushed through. Hopefully things will pick up over the next several days and we'll start to see some better numbers picked up. But I'll tell you what, they better pick up in a hurry because we have the much anticipated annual bi-state shad fishing contest coming up on April 24th and 27th. Lots of guys are anticipating that tournament. It's one of the best in the area. If you want more information on that tournament, you can dial 610-762-0440 or check them out online at shadfishingcontest.com. Lots of great prizes there if you want to get in on that tournament. All right, guys, be sure you don't miss it. Lots of stuff going on. Have yourself a great Easter. Hopefully you got an extra day of fishing in there. We'll catch you next time. From Pennsylvania, I'm George, your Pocono Outdoors guy.
Are you the best angler in the Northeast? Well, now is your chance to prove it. The Fisherman's Dream Boat Contest is back. Win this Steigercraft center console powered by Yamaha along with these other great prizes. Fish hard and weigh in as many of these species to be top on the leaderboard. What's the catch? You must be a subscriber to the Fisherman magazine. All it takes is one fish on the board to win a great prize. So however you fish, you have a shot. For all the details and official rules, visit thefisherman.com.
The April edition, New Jersey, Delaware Bay, with Taryn on the cover there with a fluke. This edition will only be on newsstands for another several days because this Sunday, right after family Easter dinner, we're going to print with the May edition. So next week sometime, the April comes out of the slots there at the newsstand and tackle shop. The May edition comes through. So that April edition you have on your coffee table, make sure to make room for the May edition coming in with 10 more feature how-to articles and all the reports and all of the calendar of events and everything that you need for the May edition. We'll get you all geared up right in time for the Fluke opener on May 4th. Now, in our calendar of events, in the April edition, you have the New Jersey State Federation of Sportsmen's Clubs annual Jamboree out in Logan Township, New Jersey. That includes, I believe, the Skillful Anglers Awards and the Garden State Deer Classic, which was moved out of the old outdoor hunting and fishing show that used to be held in Edison. So now the Federation is doing that. Next Saturday, I'll be the keynote speaker at the Federation banquet next Saturday. So perhaps I will see you there next Saturday. If I'm not mistaken, the Federation folks share my concerns about industrial offshore wind. And that topic is back in national headlines this week for a couple of reasons. Breaking news this week. First of all, the Government Accountability Office just wrapped up its 2-year investigation into industrial offshore wind and its impacts on fishing and navigation, and that was at the urging of my Congressman, Chris Smith. Now, according to Congressman Smith, this independent congressional watchdog agency report gives credibility and vindication to his concerns that offshore wind turbines pose significant threats to national security and aviation and maritime safety by interfering with radar systems. Smith went on to say the report that just came out on Monday, that it provides additional scientific justification to President Trump's pause on offshore wind, which Congressman Smith was hoping would lead to the immediate stoppage of offshore wind projects like Empire One off the coast of New Jersey, which he called, quote, dangerous and reckless. He also described industrial offshore wind energy development as, quote, egregiously flawed and a dangerous initiative that must be stopped. Now, South Jersey Congressman Jeff Van Drew also jumped in on the GAO report, said it raises significant concerns about industrial offshore wind projects, including interference with radar systems critical to national defense and aviation, threats to maritime safety, and harm to the marine environment. So again, this GAO report came out not Monday, on Tuesday. Then Wednesday afternoon, I received this email again from Congressman Van Drew. Big news here. He said, quote, today, Wednesday, Congressman Van Drew announced that following his direct engagement with the Department of the Interior, the Department of Commerce, and the Department of Justice, the Empire Wind project off the coasts of New Jersey and New York will be ordered to halt construction. Congressman Van Drew said he's been working with these federal agencies to expose the problems with this project, and now they are taking action. This is huge because the pile driving operations at Empire Wind 1 were set to begin on May 1st. That site is located less than 17 miles east of Long Branch. It's a 50-50 venture between Equinor of Norway and British Petroleum of the United Kingdom, with 54 wind turbines set to be installed, and that was going to start in just 2 weeks. So it appears that based in part on this GAO report perhaps, and the continued efforts of Congressman Van Drew and Congressman Smith, that this Empire Wind project, set to begin on May 1st, off of Long Branch, is now officially on hold. That is big news. Now, honestly, when that GAO report came out this week, I was a little bit ticked off because the Government Accountability Office, yes, government accountability, that's an oxymoron. But reading the final report, I felt that recreational fishing and the recreational fishing community's concerns were mostly ignored. Now, while the GAO report did lay out a series of action items that should be addressed, including consideration of input from the fishing industry, I don't know if GAO was really thinking about the recreational fishing industry. So when I look at this report, on page 23, it reads, quote, recreational fishermen may benefit from increased and more varied fish stocks around wind turbines in some areas. Now, it doesn't go on to explain, however, how NOAA Fisheries is going to give us more black sea bass. See, the Magnuson-Stevenson Act is the federal fisheries law which directs NOAA Fisheries and their technical folks to not go over a certain limit for harvest. So if you were to put 54 turbines off of Long Branch and that aggregates black sea bass, Those are 54 sites where we would catch more black sea bass and in a quicker fashion. So NOAA Fisheries knows this, that if we have 54 turbines, we're going to catch more black sea bass, but there's no way to give us more harvest. So basically, we're going to go over the recreational harvest limit and then deal with accountability measures, payback, punishment the year after. So there's no recourse for that currently. Quote, this is from the GAO report. One expert and 3 fishery stakeholders we spoke with from different geographic regions said recreational fishermen were optimistic about fishing opportunities near the wind turbine structures. I don't know of too many people who are optimistic about industrializing our ocean waters. I could have given hundreds of contacts to the GAO to come up with a report. So, who's the one recreational fishing expert then? That's what I wanted to know. So if you go to page 57 of this report, you'll find that that one expert in the field of recreational fishing consulted during this investigation was Rhode Island's David Monty of No Fluke Fishing LLC, which if I look at opensecrets.org, that's a registered lobbyist on Capitol Hill who, according to Open Secrets, has been paid more than $40,000 in the last 4 years by 2 clients, Ocean Conservancy and the American Saltwater Guides Association. Now, I contacted the GAO about those 3 other additional stakeholders, but the agency said they could not reveal the names in the because of anonymity and confidentiality. But they did say for this engagement, for the GAO report, they spoke with well over 100 individuals and representative stakeholder groups, and I'm going to have to find out if anybody is in there that I know, because I don't know anybody right now. Now, I would say that that Guides Association, coincidentally, is listed online at vineyardwind.com as, quote, official fisheries partner with Vineyard Wind. Don't forget, folks, this is the very same organization that I spoke about last week. They came out in opposition to the harvest control rule measures in the recreational measure setting of fluke sea bass and porgy by the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council and the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. ASGA Chief Bottle Washer Tony Frederick said the reason in the letter that he said he'd prefer to see the same old way of fisheries management implemented with those strict accountability measures. So the Recreational Reform Initiative gives us 3 years of stability with the same season size and bag limit for black sea bass, fluke, and porgy, and potentially bluefish in a couple of years, as we go along from season to season. But ASGA apparently wants us to have payback. They want rigid pound-for-pound monitoring using the MRIP, the MRIP, the Marine Recreational Information Random Surveys, and then we have to pay back on black sea bass, which, like I said, with those new turbines, there's no way out of this box. It's really a mess. So anyway, some good news coming down the road if you're like me, concerned about the industrialization of our ocean waters. By the way, this is, if there are any ASGA members watching this report, this is for you. The state of New Jersey has reopened the application period for the Striped Bass Bonus Program, that 24 to less than 28-inch striped bass bonus that you're allowed to keep once you tag it. That opens up May 15th, but you can register now. You can get that tag in advance. Just Google New Jersey Striped Bass Bonus Program to get to the page at njfishandwildlife.com. As a reminder, that bonus that comes into play as of May 15th, it's 1 fish if you tag it. If you have a tag, you have to keep the daily logs, and that comes off a percentage of the unused commercial quota for striped bass, because here in the New Jersey, in the Garden State, striped bass is a true game fish. May 15th is also the day of Striper Quest. Don't forget, no keeping of fish that day, no keeping of striped bass. That's when we send out 5 pop-up archival satellite tags on 5 different boats, but we want you to participate, members of the public. We're going to make this the biggest catch and release single day of striped bass tagging in history. We want you to join us on May 15th. We'll talk about that more next week with the May edition, because I've got an article all about Striper Quest and how you can get involved. But just hold on until next week. And until next week, I would love to base these reports on more of your photos coming in to my email, jhutchinson@thefisherman.com. Send me those photos. We'll see if we can sneak you in for next week as well. Catch them up. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the balmy temperatures on Saturday. And we'll see you again next week right here at thefisherman.com.
the famed waters of Panama awaits a fishing experience like no other. Tropic Star Lodge welcomes anglers to get in on world-famous fishing action. Plan your perfect trip today. Tropic Star Lodge, the ultimate in fishing adventures for more than 60 years.